Halloween special listener stories.
What's your ETA? We'll be there in 2 minutes. Come on, we have lives to save here.
Yes, yes.
I'm surprised they're not all screaming in terror because this is our first Telltale Guys Halloween special.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, it is the season, and it's October, and we wanted to jump on this spooky train. And what's really fun about this episode is that we are going to listen to some spooky listener stories.
Yes.
Maybe not necessarily all like Halloween specific, but they're all kind of spooky. From what I know, I'm going into this blind.
Okay.
Josh, first of all, how are you doing?
Doing all right. As you can see, listeners and everyone, still in my makeshift studio because the house reno is taking much longer than expected. So hopefully by Christmas it'll be done.
Well, your little friend next to you is not helping out. He needs to be helping out with renovations and also this podcast. Ooh, there you go.
Yes, Scully over here. He is pretty much worthless. Doesn't really bring much to the table, but he doesn't talk much, so that's good. That's keeps his mouth shut.
Do you usually put him outside for the trick or treaters when Halloween comes around?
Oh no, they'd steal it. That's a really cool piece. It's like made out of pewter or something.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
okay.
It's heavy. Like I got it way back in the day during my travels. It has it. I don't know if you could see. Maybe it's kind of cool on the show, but it's got like Celtic designs on the skull.
Okay. I could not tell from that distance earlier. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's really awesome. And
no wonder like you were kind of like lifting it slow, and I was like, I expected it was like some Hollywood or some Halloween like store just a classic item or something.
No, yeah, it's either that or I'm very weak, but yeah, it's solid. I mean, this thing's a good, I don't know, 7 pounds maybe. Mm-hmm. So like a real human head.
Speaking of skull, it's got my
I like your
former Orange Theory shirt when I used to be part of that cult.
Decor. I went with the Venom spider.
Yeah,
so we're very festive. But yeah, the stories today that we're going to be talking about, Zane, very excited from listeners that have submitted. So thanks to the listeners who submitted those in. Very excited to tell your stories about what you experienced. But just to let you kind of a little preview, perhaps I'll give you a little snippet of what some of these are about. So we got like hauntings, like family hauntings. We got like a demonic attack. We got a like guardian angel type of story.
Wow.
Perhaps a battlefield ghost of some sort, and then an exorcism. So a bona fide
two exorcism. Well, like
one is a possession, or not a possession. One is an attack by like a demon, and the other one is someone experienced an actual exorcism in person. So very rare. You don't get a lot of those often. So these are all exclusives, Telltale Guy exclusives. So make sure you share, tell people about it, or we're bringing you the hot freshness here. And
happy Halloween to all of us.
Sweet. Yes. And if you do have stories of your own that you want to share, or if someone else that has stories they want to share, send us a note at heyguys@telltaleguys.com, and we'll make sure to reach out to you and see if we can maybe record what you have to tell.
Yeah, and also in all our socials where it applies, like us, write a review, especially on iTunes, Spotify, and all that. That really helps with all our little algorithms, and also we want to hear comments. We want to see those comments on the socials, so we'll comment back. So yeah, please do.
Help us help you, because in order for us to bring you these stories that you're about to hear, we need you guys to participate in the experience. Yeah. But with that, let's get to our first story here, Zane. And this one is from a listener named Shelly. And I'll just let her tell it, and then we'll come back when she's done and then discuss it. All right?
Hey, everybody. I'm so grateful to be here today on Telltale Guys. I love the show. Josh and Zane have such great stories. I've enjoyed them, and I am excited to be able to tell my ghost story. It's my only ghost story, but it's a good one. Um, about 30 years ago, I would say, I went to visit my parents. And I had my little son Jake with me, and Jake was probably 4, maybe 5 at the time. And we went over to visit, and a little background, my parents lived about a mile from us, and the last 5 years of my grandfather's life, he lived with my parents. He was from Michigan. His nickname was Blue Jay, and he was kind of an interesting character, and I called him Grandpa. My kids called him Old Papa, and most people called him Blue Jay. And Blue Jay lived to be 95. So he probably lived with my parents about 4 or 5 years before he passed away. And he lived in the master bedroom downstairs. They had a master upstairs and a master downstairs. And Old Papa lived in the master bedroom downstairs. Jake, my little boy, was very mischievous. And he loved to just irritate Old Papa as much as he possibly could. Old Papa was very strict about some things. He had a couple little toys that he had on his side little table, and he didn't let any of the kids touch them. And he had a hat. He had an orange, like a I think he would wear it out in the woods hunting kind of hat. And he had a cane, a little silver cane. And anytime, he would never let the kids touch it. Well, of course, that made Jake want to get it every time he came. So Old Papa just really did not like anybody touching his things. He had little toys, and he had his cane, and he had his hat, and none of the kids, nobody was allowed to touch it. Well, Jacob, being the mischievous one, he always tried to go sneak those things. And he'd always take his orange hat, and he'd take his cane from behind his chair where Old Papa wouldn't see him, and he'd run off with him. And that was something he just loved to do. He was fascinated with those things. And Old Papa would be yelling at him, saying, "Oh, you're such an awful guy. You're such an awful guy. You want his stuff back." But Jake just loved to irritate him. I think it's one of his favorite things to do. One of his favorite things he did. One day we went over to visit my parents. This was after my grandfather had passed away, and Jake had to go to the potty, and so he's sitting in there on the toilet, and I was sitting on the side of the tub talking with Jake while he was using the potty. He was asking all his usual questions, and Old Papa's, that bathroom had a door that opened to the hallway, which we had left open, and also had a door that was closed, but it entered into the bedroom that Old Papa was in. And Jake said to me, he said, "Mama, whatever happened to Old Papa's cane?" And the minute that he said it, the door to the bedroom, which was closed, flew open, not just kind of creeped open, it flew open, and the cane flew into the bathroom and landed on the floor right in front of me. And this is where I'm a little embarrassed because it makes me sound like a very bad mom, but I left my little boy sitting on the toilet with what I thought was a ghost, and I ran into the den to tell my parents the whole story. I was in a panic. I was like, "Oh my gosh, you won't believe what just happened." And my dad, trying to be the reasonable one, said, "Oh, Jake probably was in there playing with the cane or something and leaned it on the door." But then he went in there and he said that my dad knew that he had hung the cane in the closet, and he went into the closet where he had hung it, and he realized that Jake could not have gotten that cane down because it was there's like two rails in the closet. One was pretty high, and that's where he had hung that cane. And so I really believe that it was the ghost of Old Papa. And so that's my ghost story. Thanks for the opportunity to tell my story.
All right. What do you think about that one, Zane?
It's pretty freaky.
Yeah.
How old was her son when this happened?
He's a toddler, like 4, I think, 3 or 4.
Hopefully he doesn't really remember that. I mean, I don't know. That's around the age where you start remembering things.
Yeah, I think I did ask if he remembered that, and she said he doesn't. She doesn't think he does, but that's terrifying. I love the part where she runs out of the bathroom,
Yeah.
leaving him on the toilet. That's hilarious. Yeah.
Ah,
Oh.
I
Every man for himself.
yeah, I know. That's like Newman in Seinfeld leaving all the children when he thinks the building's gonna catch on fire. Pushing out the clown out of the way, pushing kids out of the way.
Yeah.
It sounds like she's not as bad as Newman. I'm sorry,
No.
not Newman.
George.
George.
Yeah.
Both terrible people. Anyways, that's you hear these ghost stories, and that type of act is usually not so obvious. Usually maybe something falls over, but the fact that the door like slammed
Yeah.
open and the cane flew in, or I think it flew in, right?
Yeah,
Or
it
just
flew in.
fell.
Yeah.
Like that's, I mean, yeah, you hear these stories, they're usually not that obvious.
Hmm.
So that's what kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, me too. Like, yeah, you were saying like they're more subtle, like just something like creaks on the wall or they hear a noise bang when they say something, but actually like the door flings open and then something comes into the room forcefully is pretty frightening.
Mhm.
And to her point where it was like, oh, maybe the kid was playing in there. Is like, well, yeah, he couldn't have gotten it because the cane was high up,
Yeah.
stored away. So somebody removed it and threw it in the room. So I think that's terrifying. But I love like family like ghost stories like that because it's like your loved one's trying to communicate with you, or at
Mhm.
this point, I guess he was kind of grumpy, grumpy grandpa, and he's like, "Yo, don't you be talking about my cave!"
Yeah. And so I was trying to recap a bit. He was in the bathroom. His mom was nearby in the adjacent room when it
No,
happened.
she was sitting on the tub next to him
Oh,
while he was on
okay.
the toilet. Yeah, because
Misheard that.
he was a little kid, so he wasn't like fully,
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So she's just in there, let him do his business, and then
Yeah.
he's asking his question about the cane, and Grandpa answered.
It's right here, you little twerp.
Yeah, don't touch it.
Don't touch
That's
it.
a good way to get you to not touch the cane, though, is to frighten you so bad where it's like, "No, I don't want any piece of that. That's
Right.
that's terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, when you were a kid, there was nothing like, if there was a kind of, you could tell there was like an angry grandpa you're walking by, or maybe you had, a grandpa, a grandma, whatever, that were not in great moods, not fun. So,
No.
but it's funny that this kid, like, he loved messing around with, like, it sounded like his grandpa wanted things just
Hmm.
neat. And apparently it left a legacy beyond this life, which is interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that was a great story, Shelley. Thank you for sharing that.
Hey,
And
Shelley.
Jake, I hope you're not too terrified of canes to this day. But if you remember it, let us know. We'll like hear
Yeah,
your
I'd
account of
love
it
to
if you
hear
remember it.
your testimony if you remember.
Yeah. All right. So let's play the next story here now. This one I'm going to call Ghost Horse. So let's play this for everybody.
Hey, Telltale guys. Thank you for having me on. Love the show. Thank you for the opportunity, letting me tell my story. My name's Eric. I'm 42 years old. This happened back, it was either 2000 or 2001, in the winter in Saratoga, New York. My friend John and I, one of our favorite places to go was the Saratoga Battlefield. And it's just a beautiful spot. There's a lot of history there. We would go there day or night, didn't matter. It was the middle of winter, and we drove up to the visitor center at nighttime. It was snowing. It was beautiful just to hang out, talk. The visitor center sits up on top of the hill, or a hill, and you have to take this staircase up to get there, back down to the parking lot where the car was. So we hung out there for a little bit, heading back down to the car. About halfway down, there's a small landing, just a clearing, flat piece of land before you continue down to the parking lot. As we were both going down the staircase, we stopped at the same time, right by this clearing, and we both started walking again. And we didn't say anything until we got down into the car. I looked at John, he looked at me, and we both asked each other, "Did you see that?" And after a couple seconds, we described to each other what we saw, and it wasn't a person. we saw this horse. It was a gray, white horse just standing there, not looking at us or anything in particular. But it had reins, it had saddlebags, it had a blanket over its back. And it was just standing there as the snow came down around it. You know, I can't put a timestamp on it. It just, I saw it and it was just, I froze and was fixated on it until it just wasn't there anymore. And how long I was frozen and staring at it, like 5 seconds, a minute, I couldn't tell you. I just got lost in the moment. It was just there, and then it wasn't. It didn't dissolve or form wavy lines and float away. It was there, and then it ceased to exist. Saratoga Battlefield, it's known as the turning point of the Revolution. The summer of 1776, the American armies pushed back the British that were coming down from the north and attacking from the western part of the state. It was a pretty big moment in the American Revolution. So the horse that we saw was, decked out for that time period. It looked like it would have been ridden by a colonel or a general in the colonial army. And that's really the end of the ghost story there. It wasn't a ghost of a human, it was a ghost of an animal. But it definitely is something that belonged in the Saratoga Battlefield.
All right, Zane.
That was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
You don't, I mean, maybe you know a little more, but I feel like you don't hear a lot of ghost stories that relate to like animals or other type of creatures besides just like human type specters. But that's pretty creepy. That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the thing that jumped out to me from the story is that, you don't hear about ghost animals so much. Maybe your pets or something like that has more of a strong tie to your family. You hear about those, but like a random horse on a battlefield, you don't hear about that so much. And that's really crazy to me because it's like Eric here, who was telling the story, he seems like he knows his history. It's not just like somebody who was like, oh, I was just a horse from the farm or something like that. Like he was very specific about it. It was kind of the horse was decorated in what of the time period would have been appropriate. So to me, that was very fascinating. And I almost wonder, if we had more time to do research on it, if we would be able to find out during the Revolutionary War in this battle, was there a general who got dehorsed or a colonel who got dehorsed or something? And maybe that horse is just wandering around looking for its rider, maybe that's maybe that's the scenario that happened there. Why nobody was on it,
Yeah, that way. And it's also just creepy how it just kind of vanished, just instantly. It always makes me think like it could have been like some sort of optical illusion because how sometimes maybe at your peripheral you feel like you see something, you look and there's nothing there, and you're like, I don't know what that was, but it instantly goes away. So but I'm not necessarily doubting this story. I feel like anyone who is very into history, individual is probably pretty smart, probably pretty practical, and he probably saw something that was weird that he couldn't explain. But that's interesting, just how it disappeared.
Yeah, well, to that point too, Zane, like his friend saw it as well, so it wasn't just one person seeing this thing. They both confirmed that that's what they saw, and they were looking at. And this, maybe a little alternate theory here is because he was mentioning that they just kind of fixated on it and seemed like they lost track of time a little bit. Not like a lot of time, but it was, a couple seconds, a minute, whatever. Maybe they walked into a time slip,
You like these time slips?
I do. I love time slips because there's like, you don't get a lot of stories. There's some famous ones out there. But as far as like, everyday effects, maybe ghost horse isn't a thing. Maybe time slip and you're seeing the horse, and because of there's kind of goes back to our haunted White House episode is like there's so much energy on a battlefield that I don't know, maybe it opens up some sort of quantum portal or something to manifest itself in front of people. But maybe it's a ghost too. I don't know. It'd be interesting if any of listeners out there have also experienced a riderless horse in a battlefield, or this particular battlefield in New
Or
York.
like an animal related ghost story, because I feel
Yeah.
like it's a little bit more rare. Before we jump forward, what would be more freaky to you, Josh? Seeing animal type ghosts or a person type ghost?
Well, I guess it depends on the animal. Like if it's a horse, not that scary. But if it's like a bear or a dinosaur, terrifying. And if I saw a person wandering inside my house, that would be more terrifying to me. So I think that would be I would rather see an animal ghost than a human ghost, especially with some of them being not so well intentioned. I feel like the animals aren't necessarily out to get you, but some hauntings are more, they seem terrifying, which on an upcoming story here you'll see. But yeah, I think that's what I would go with animal. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. It would be. I think I'd be more mesmerized if I saw some sort of animal ghost. Like, what am I looking at here? But if it was a person, I mean, like, if you think about it, if you're in your house and you see a strange individual that you don't know, you instantly freak out, like alarm start going off, and your flight or fight starts kicking in. So yeah, I agree. I think I would be more like amazed, kind of like this report here. Just like I was just looking at it for a long time, I lost track of time. Like, what is this? And it's
Yeah.
possibly it's like beautiful, like, or I don't know, and really cool story.
Yeah, Eric, thanks for sharing that one.
Yeah.
And if you have any more or see any more horses, let us know. We'd love to hear more stories. All right, so let's bring up next one. This one's a little bit more terrifying, I guess.
Great.
So we'll play this one. If you're, I call this one demonic mirror. So
Okay.
yeah, let's go ahead and play this one. It's a little bit longer than the last one, but we'll discuss it afterward.
Hey guys, I love your show. My name is Shannon, and I just want to share a little bit about some of my experiences. I have always had a spiritual side since I was a little girl. I have not always understood it, but I've experienced, different paranormal things happening around me. When I was a young girl, dark things would come to me, and I was very terrified. But over the years, I learned to accept that and kind of put it to the back of my mind. But when I was probably around 26, maybe 27, I got divorced and I moved into a mobile home, and it was in Alabama where I live. And as far as I know, nothing had ever happened in the house. But for a period of time, the way the house was laid out, from my bedroom, you could see straight through into the living room. And there was this big irregular shaped mirror that hung over the couch. It was glued to the wall. But I was terrified of that mirror. That mirror was terrifying to me. It was like an irregular shaped mirror, and it was a huge mirror. It was over the couch. It was one of those big mirrors. And for probably 2 years that I was first moved into this house, I would wake up every night at 3 o'clock in the morning. And it was as if something would say to me, if you open your eyes, you're going to see something in this mirror. And so I was terrified of that mirror, to the point that eventually I tore the mirror off the wall, painted over it, and got rid of the mirror. But during the time that I was staying in this house, weird things would happen. I would have these dish towels that I hung on the stove, and I had 3 of them, and I always kept them evenly spaced apart. I may be a little bit OCD, but they would move. They would move. Sometimes they would be all the way over to one side. Sometimes they would be all in the middle. There was no one in the house but me, so obviously I wasn't moving them. So my niece came to stay. Her name is April. So she came to spend the night with me. They're all nicely hung. We're sitting on the couch, and I'm telling her the story about how these towels have been moving. And I'm like, look, see, they're perfect over there. There's nothing wrong with them. And she's like, yeah, that looks great. Well, we're sitting there talking, and a few minutes later, we look over there, and they've been moved. Neither one of us had gotten up. So we didn't do it. Then I had a situation where some of my jewelry was being moved around in the house. Still dealing with the mirror. You know, this was throughout the time I was dealing with the mirror. So all this was happening at the same time. So I got rid of the mirror. Kind of didn't really cleansed my house, went through cleansing my house. But during this time, I was also having these visions or dreams that I was murdered in this house and I was found dead in the bathtub. So I feel like that I was being spiritually haunted and traumatized mentally. So after I got rid of the mirror, redid some stuff in my house, did some cleansing, the dreams went away, you know, things settled down. But then after I had my little girl, it was just me and her living there. And she, you know, she was old enough to talk, but she's, you know, she wasn't in school yet. So she was maybe 4. I was standing in the kitchen and she asked me who the man was standing behind me. And I turned around, of course, it's just me and her at home. And she said, he's standing right behind you. And of course, I don't see anyone. And so she describes him as being a tall man who's older and who was black. I didn't feel threatened, but I could feel that there was a spirit in the house. So right after that, we moved out and haven't lived in that place since. But I still have different spiritual activity that happens around me, or where I have experienced different spiritual things. And, you know, with dreams or visions that come true. So, you know, the more open you are to the spirit world, the more you're apt to see as the veil thins between the spirit world and the reality, those type of things happen to you. But that was probably the most tormented I was, because for 2 years I had dreams of my death and woke up at 3 o'clock every morning, just terrorized. And I guess the worst thing that happened was I was in my bed in that house, and a demon spirit, something held me down, and it had its, I say thumb, but thumb, hand thing, whatever, on my thigh, and then one on the opposite shoulder, and its eyes were slit. I opened my eyes, and its eyes were like in a slit, going straight up and down. And I felt my life energy swirling out of my stomach, coming up into my throat. And I'm a Christian and I believe in Jesus. So as I was feeling the energy coming up out of my stomach, I felt like that it was trying to kill me. I just said, Jesus. That's all I could manage to say. And the air sucked back into my body, and it was gone. So that was probably the most terrifying thing that's ever happened to me. And the next morning I had a bruise on my leg in the very spot where I felt that it was holding me down. So that was all prior to me getting rid of the mirror. But once I got rid of the mirror and cleansed my house, those types of things quit happening.
Well, Zane, your face.
Holy crap.
Yeah, there's a lot in that one.
Wow. Well, God bless this lady, and she seems a very positive person. Obviously,
Shannon, yes.
she's very full of faith. But wow, it sounds like she's experienced a lot, and yeah, that's intense. That, you know, the thing that stood out to me is definitely that mirror. Her description of that. And so, did she say? So she never opened up her eyes and saw the mirror, or when did this demonic force attacked her?
No, I don't think it was just, I got the sense the mirror was more like a portal. It almost felt like it was like letting in the darkness into where she was living. So I don't think it was like she looked at the mirror and then she saw it come out of the mirror. It was just like kind of like that.
I remember she said, like, she had this voice in her head saying, if you open your eyes, you will see something. And so I assumed maybe something, coming out of the mirror, or she would see. But so that event at the end that happened when she had the mirror up, and then she got rid of it and did whatever cleansing act she did.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
it almost felt to me a little bit reminded me a little bit of, not, yours wasn't as bad when you were talking about, you heard that voice when you were just sitting there.
Right.
Kind of like the same way she heard the voice that was kind of calling to her. But like between that and her kid seeing the ghost presence behind her in the thing, I mean, kids I think are more prone to, I guess, the supernatural, because
Yeah.
they're closer to it than you get as you're an adult.
Right.
And they say weird things, they see weird things, and it's terrifying. I don't know, if it were me, I would have moved out of that house the first night. That was not. I would not have stayed there as long as she did. I think she said
I,
2 years or something.
I guess it's because she's known for a long time, ever since she's really become aware that
Mhm.
she is attracted, or supernatural forces are attracted to her. So she's just kind of used to it in a way.
Yeah.
So maybe she thought she can kind of deal with it. Um, I'm not sure. Eventually she did, but that is a long time that she waited, and she had some very scary experiences.
And that's a heavy, I don't know if you can call it a gift, maybe, or, almost like in The Sixth Sense, the movie, but it's like, that is such a heavy thing. Like, I feel like that's something you could never get used to, but I mean, it seems like she did. And I have heard of other people that have this ability, they get used to it as well. But I mean, that's just so terrifying to have like dark energy around you, especially one that attacks you in the middle of the night, and says the things that it does. But a good call getting rid of the mirror, I guess, and cleansing the house. But I cannot fathom having that. I would think it more of a curse, but I guess some people like it. I'm not saying Shannon, the person who's telling the story, likes it, but other people do like being able to draw the energy, I guess, to them. But I wouldn't welcome that to your life now.
Yeah, I've never had those experiences. I'm not sure if I ever will. Not sure if I do want that, but I've thought about that before. Like, if you're open to it, you can try to experience it more. But I'm not sure if I want to do that. One thing that stood out to me was, she said this feeling of dread or this haunting happened at 3 p.m. That stood out to me because I believe in, a lot of Christian faith. It's known that Christ was killed at 3 p.m.
Mm.
And so, according to some Christian sects, basically demonic forces like to operate more so at 3 o'clock at night, because that's kind of like their witching hour, if you will, and it's like a mockery of when Christ died at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. So that
Zane
was,
pulling in the deep, deep
I know,
knowledge there.
little Catholic part of me, I guess. I won't say that's exactly accurate, but that's what I've heard, and that's what also stood out to me. And I've
Mhm.
heard stories about that. Like, around that hour, things can get weird. Anytime I wake up around that hour, I'm like, eh. But
Go back to sleep quick.
yeah, thankfully nothing's happened. So hopefully,
It is interesting you brought that up, Zane, because she did mention that on the story. I ended up cutting it out with some other stuff, and I had never heard that before about the inverse of the 3 p.m. in Christianity and stuff like that. So that was really cool that you knew about it and brought it up too, kind of like what she was saying. That didn't make it into it, but I mean, yeah, the witching hour, right? I mean, that's what it's kind of like the darkness is attracted to times, and the mocking aspect of it. Yeah. And
Mhm.
considering that she's a person of faith, is that like, are they focusing extra on her to make a point, like
Yeah,
maybe something too. One more thing that did stand out to me in the story was she was talking about the washcloths that she would put on the thing, and they were evenly spaced. Normally I think people would just kind of brush that off, like, oh, that maybe I just bumped it when I walked by or something. But she made a point. She's like, I'm kind of OCD about this thing.
yeah,
And I think we all have things that we're particular about, that if something is askew in this way it happens, then something's up, and maybe you're not just like thinking you did something right, like maybe you're very OCD about, I don't know, setting the table, and you always put your silverware a certain way when you set, I mean, I don't, this is kind of old fashioned, people don't do this anymore, but maybe you set it a certain way, and maybe you walk away and you come back and the silverware is in a different position, and you're like, did I set it? No, I wouldn't have done that because I'm so OCD about this thing, like this is just something moved it.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I know I'm OCD on some things, so I feel like I would notice. But that did not surprise me when she talked about that. I was like, I've heard that from other just other stories, and that would just simple things like that would be freaky enough for me. I don't know if I would move out, but that would get my wheels to start turning.
At what point would you move out, Zane? Like would you wait for, okay, the stuff, your jewelry's moving around, washcloth's moving around. Okay, this is just a little trickster ghost. Maybe it's just, but then you start getting, seeing the presence in behind, or your kids start seeing a presence behind you. Do you move out then, or do you wait till you get attacked physically, or what do you think?
I think seeing the presence would pretty much do it. All right, I think we got to go because I don't want to tempt fate and get attacked like this experience she had. So yeah, I think moving stuff around, it would bother me, but seeing something would kind of be the final nail in the coffin.
Ooh. On a similar question, I guess. You have dogs. I have dogs.
Lots of dogs.
Yeah. You ever, where they just stand there and they start looking at something and there's nothing there, and it's like, what are you looking at? You're freaking me out, dog. We gotta move.
Just like with kids, I think animals, for whatever reason, I think it's because they're just their nature, and they're hypersensitive to so many different things. I just think they're sensitive to other things, maybe supernatural. And so, yeah, I've seen a couple, like my cat or my dog, when they've done that, I'm like, what are you looking at? And what is in my room at the moment? Like I've definitely paid attention. I'm like, I'm going to pay attention to you. And it goes with, that's why you have animals too, for protection. Like they can sense things. It could be like another predator, let's say you're camping, or like a robber. That's what they're great at. And so even if it's something like that, even if it's not supernatural, I pay attention to them because
good point.
They're connected more so. And like you said, I think kids are too, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, Evelyn hates it that because our dogs are kind of big and they bark a lot in the middle of the night. Like they'll just start, I don't know, they hear something outside. It's usually like deer walking through the yard or something, but they'll go and like alert the house and like just bark up a storm in the middle of the night. And she hates it. But I'm like, no, let them bark. They're doing their job. They're alerting us to something that's not right in this situation, even though it's deer or whatever. But I want them to do that. But how about we go to a palate cleanser? Because that was kind of heavy, Zane. Maybe this is a little bit softer paranormal story. I think a nicer one. I call it maybe guardian angel, roadway guardian angel. Okay. So let's. This one is and thanks Shannon for submitting that story. Yeah. And more, keep them coming. We love them. And this one is from Melissa. So let's hear Melissa's story.
Hey, Telltale guys, this is Melissa, and I love your show. I was going to share a little bit about my story from many years ago. It was the late 1980s. During that time, in the late 80s, I would have definitely had some serious hairspray in, a pair of Z Cavaricis, and a very blousy white top with short boots. That would have been the look of the day, with thick eyebrows and dark lipstick. It was a look. It would be like easy to dance to MC Hammer, perhaps.
Hey, this is DJ Twice as Nice.
And I was a DJ coming home from one of my gigs. We did clubs, mostly clubs and bars. It was pretty small. So I was a DJ out on Long Island, and it was pretty late, and I had just been up all day, and then up until about 2 o'clock in the morning I was DJing, and that meant no drinking while I was working. And the road was a highway, but it was east on Long Island, which the lights got further and further apart, and there was not really that much traffic at the time of night that I was out. The highway that I was on was also fairly dark, so driving down the road, I felt myself dozing off a little bit, and that's when I heard the voice next to me yelling, "Hey!" That was it. I woke up and I looked over, I looked ahead of me, and there was a car parked about 200 feet in front of me. I was on my way to crash into a car that was parked on the side of the road. And I swerved, and I looked over. The hair on the back of my neck was standing up. And if it hadn't been for the passenger yelling, "Hey!" But there was no passenger. I did think, as when I heard the voice, and I thought, I knew that I heard the voice. It was like when you're in the crowded room and somebody says something that makes everybody stop, and then it just seems like the voice hangs there. It was loud, and it was there. It was present. It wasn't from far away. It didn't feel like it was in my head, or it didn't have a surreal feeling to it. It felt like someone was right there. And it wasn't a gender specific voice. It wasn't somebody that I knew. But it was loud. And it came from right next to me. And I just knew that it wasn't something that I imagined, because it would not have been yelling at me directly before I was going to hit a parked car. And just the way it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, and my heart was racing. And I think part of it could have been because I almost hit a parked car, but it just stayed with me. It stayed with me, and it's never left me. I always knew that I was not alone that night. I have thought of it as a guardian angel. As time has gone by, I go back to whether or not my mom had passed away that year. So it does cross my mind. It didn't sound to me like my mother sounded if she were alive. But I did think that there was somebody there, and they were looking out for me in that moment.
All right, that was a very uplifting story, at least one that gives you a little bit more hope than the previous one. Thanks, Melissa, for sharing that. Zane, what do you think about that one?
Yeah, that was good. Also, just with the added 80s music, it good palate cleanser from the previous recounting.
Yeah,
really cool story. That's just pretty fascinating, and I feel like you hear more so about just ghosts and kind of negative stories. And this was a nice, just like, I mean, whether it was a guardian angel or something else, some other positive presence that helped save her life. Pretty cool. And I also it made me go down this quick rabbit hole in my head. Like, what if there was someone inside that car that was parked, and what if they were like, they saw her coming and were like, stop. And that energy of them, kind of got focused onto her.
Wow, that's
totally out of the weeds there, but
that's a cool theory, Zane. I never, was it a psychic projection? Almost.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I don't know. I don't want to take anything away, but that just kind of jumped out at me.
Yeah.
But she felt like the presence was with there, maybe kind of to her right, I guess, or wherever it was close to her inside the car. But yeah, that kind of reminds me about my experience but it was more like demonic experience where I was
Mhm.
listening to something on the TV and someone proposed a question on the TV and someone answered in a very demonic voice, and but it was different. But that reminded me of that too.
Yeah.
But cool. Like guardian angel stories that's a welcome relief. And have you heard much about like guardian angel stories and kind of your
Yeah, I mean, you hear about them, and when you get firsthand accounts of them, like we did from Melissa, they're carry a lot more weight, I think, than because you hear kind of like more so on like read them in a book or something. It's very detached. And this one, I got kind of the sense that Melissa didn't necessarily know what to um, attribute this to. Like maybe it was a guardian angel, but maybe parts of it were like she was more prone. Like she mentioned the thing about the hair standing up on the back of her neck. Is like, was that from the presence, or was that because she was in a dangerous situation? Um, but I mean, there's several, I guess, working theories on it. Like you mentioned a new one that I thought was great with the projection of like if someone was in that other car and they saw her coming and like, hey, and they just kind of like somehow psychically transferred into her vehicle because she said she didn't recognize the voice.
uh,
Um, but maybe if the maybe when your loved one comes back from the veil, they don't quite have the same sound because they're spirit energy. So it could be maybe her mother was trying to warn her or sent another spirit or an angel, guardian angel, to kind of look after her that night. Would have been great as well. It also kind of reminded me a little bit of something called the third man factor. Have you heard of that?
mm-mm.
It's kind of this phenomenon that happens in extreme situations. A lot of times, like mountain climbers, people lost at sea, or something like that, experience this like unseen presence that is there with them to kind of comfort them during a hardship or some hard time, and usually gets them out of a pickle or something like that. If they're like experienced or about to like get into danger, they'll be like, this man, he was walking with me, but I was up there on the mountain alone, but he was there, and he said, just go over this next ridge and you'll get down to safety or something like that.
Yeah.
So the third man factor, interesting stories when people are in like extreme survivals. Is that something
Yeah.
that is your body produces internally, like as like some sort of extrasensory power that we have that can unlock, or is it a guardian angel that's looking after you that comes down and when you're in a situation like this one where you're about to crash and it's not your time yet and they say, hey, wake up,
Snap.
yeah, and you do. you know I've been in situations where I've been driving, you kind of doze off for a minute. I never heard any voices or anything like that, just me naturally doing it myself. So it's kind of weird. Like you would think like if that was a natural thing, they would be used to it or experienced it before, but it seemed like a one-off thing. And I don't know if you've ever been drowsy sleeping. Don't drive drowsy, people. That's bad. But if it happens, it's like it's more like you snap yourself out of it. You don't get a sensory thing out of it. But I love that story. It's very unscary and very motivational. So
Mhm.
guardian angels are great. Have you ever heard anybody else that or anyone in your family ever talk about a guardian angel or anything like that?
I think my wife's brother has something similar to that.
Hmm.
Um, doesn't really want to talk about it,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, there's I think more so on my wife's side there is
Yeah. Mhm.
more kind of spiritual activity that they're like kind of they're just more open to whether they want it or not. There's
They're prone to that sort of thing. I do
yeah.
find that in situations like when you hear stories like it kind of like has family ties, like these kind of abilities. And I think you see that pan out from, various other people's experiences.
Mhm.
But yeah, understandably, not everyone's comfortable talking about that. But those of you who are, we welcome the stories, and obviously no judgment zone here. We like to talk about it and discuss things like this.
Yeah.
And
It's
Melissa,
fascinating.
thank you for sharing that story with us. And we're glad that someone was with you that night and made sure you didn't crash into that vehicle
Yeah,
for
definitely.
sure. So that was a light story there, Zane. So maybe we need a palate cleanser from that and get into another dark one with.
Why not? Happy Halloween.
All right, so this is going to be the final story here. This one is the exorcism story, and I think very appropriate to end the Halloween episode with this one. So
Really?
this one a little bit longer too. So we'll play this one and then come back on the flip side.
Hey, Telltale guys, huge fan. Thank you for having me on. My name is Abby, and I'm going to tell you about a story that I was a part of an exorcism. This happened circa 2019 in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, in the middle of summer. I was a camp counselor at a theology camp on the campus of North Carolina Wesleyan College. Shout out. At the time, I was a college student, but the year prior, I was actually a camper at this camp. And once I became a college student, they asked me to be a counselor, and so I did. So it was about me and about 8 other college students were in charge of 25 high school kids. And we had some older adults who were like pastors, and like the head theology professor was also in charge of these kids, and they stayed for a week in the dorms with us, and every single day kind of looked a little different. We would go out into the community, learn about whatever our theme that week was. It was some type of theology theme each week. This week I don't particularly remember what the theme was, but in the evenings, we would have the same routine. All the campers would come together. We would have a sermon, a worship night, and end in prayer. At the start of this week, it was a little different than the other weeks that I had been a part of as a camper and a counselor. All the students came, and we had this one particular student who he was probably about 14 or 15, and you could tell that he did not want to be there. His parents just dropped him off, and he kind of just stuck to himself, was on his phone all the time, and wasn't like the other campers in the way that he was kind of just into darker themes, which wasn't like abnormal. We had some Christian students who were into horror movies and stuff, but he would just say like inappropriate stuff at like the wrong times, and nobody really liked, it was sad to say nobody really liked hanging out with him because he was a little bit weird and would just say these weird things, and you could tell wasn't like the normal Christian kid coming to this camp. So one of our camp counselors named Joe, he's actually a pastor now, was in charge. He was in charge of this kid, and our theology professor would come to Joe and be like, hey Joe, can you just try to get through to him, talk to him a little bit, see what's like going on, why is he saying these things? Why is he, obviously not being a good influence on the other kids? And so Joe had to go and pull him to the side and talk to him a lot about like, hey, like what's going on? Why aren't you getting involved? He would just stick on his phone during like your sermons and like would laugh and act out like during your prayer time, and you could tell just wasn't in the right headspace. And Joe just said he really couldn't get through to him. So flash forward to the end of this week, we have our last sermon and our last prayer and worship night. And this was a special night because we had like the bishop of the college come and do like a special sermon. And at the very end, he was going to anoint our head with oil and the sign of the cross as just like a nod to like Psalm 23 where it says the Lord anoints your head with oil. And so we line up and we all are doing that, and it gets to this one kid's turn, and he obviously does not want to do it. And he's saying, no, I'm not doing it. And they're like, it's okay, like you don't have to, but he's still standing there. So the bishop goes ahead and does the sign of the cross with oil on his forehead, and he immediately drops to the ground and starts throwing up this green bile. It's not normal throw up, it is green, thick bile, and he's like gagging and choking on it. And everybody's like, what the heck? like, what the heck is going on? Like, we've never seen this before. This isn't normal. And he just keeps throwing up and hacking and groaning and moaning. And so the bishop and our theology professor just start praying out loud. They immediately kind of seem like know what to do, like jump into action and are like saying, like, whatever is in him, get out of him. You have no authority here. Like, in Jesus' name, get out, leave him alone. And at that point, one of our leaders instructed all of the rest of the campers to leave the chapel, leave the room. They did not want the campers to see this, but the counselors could stay. And so me and the counselors were looking around like, what is happening? He is not speaking English. He is groaning and saying things that sound like gibberish and don't make sense. And that's when the bishop instructs all of us to lay hands on him and start praying out loud to let this demon come out of him. And he is gripping the floor and shaking violently. And this is a 14-year-old kid that it was just like a weird thing to see. And so we all start praying out loud, and I lost track of how much time this took. It was no less than it at least took 20 minutes at this point. I don't know, it could have been 20 minutes to 45 minutes. We were there praying over him. He was throwing up this green substance and gripping the floor, shaking, mumbling and saying words that we didn't know what he was doing. So at this point, the head bishop who was performing this ceremony was a Catholic bishop, and he starts reading a Bible verse in Latin, which I don't know what that Bible verse was, but it was Latin, and he starts doing it, and all of a sudden the boy goes completely still. He stops shaking and mumbling and throwing up. Me and the other college students are just looking around and being like, what in the world? Like, we have never experienced anything like this before. Seen this for all 18 and 19-year-olds. And all of a sudden, after that, he stands up and you can tell instantly, completely changed. His demeanor has changed. His face looks different. His eyes are open and wider, and he has no idea what has happened to him. And he is just really confused, what just happened to me. And so at that point, our leaders take him and kind of explain in private what had happened to him. Meanwhile, the campers are outside, scared to death, have no idea what has gone on, and we were instructed not to tell them what really took place in front of our eyes, because first of all, we didn't want to throw this one kid under the bus as the demon-possessed kid and have all the other campers be like, he was possessed by a demon, and tell everybody. Meanwhile, I'm on this podcast telling everybody. But yeah, it was not to frighten them and stuff. And so after that, the next morning, that ended our week with those campers, and it's been something that has been hard to explain to other people what has happened, because it happens so quickly and we couldn't tell the campers what happened. And yeah, it was just a crazy experience to be a part of. So yeah, that was my exorcism story.
Wow, Abby, that was quite a story to tell. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Zane, you look like you were very disturbed throughout that.
Well, that's probably just coming from a Catholic background. That's probably my biggest nightmare, is to encounter that scenario. Yeah. So, and what's amazing to me is that there were so many witnesses. So it sounds like a lot of people saw something similar at this event, and that's pretty incredible, because you feel like you hear about exorcisms, it's maybe a couple family members and a priest, and somehow the account got out, or it was published, or the church released it. That's another thing that it reminded me of, and it freaks me out, is that there is a sect of in the Catholic Church that is devoted to exorcisms. They have official exorcists, and it's just like, what is going on in this world that we really don't know about? So, anyways, back to the story. Like, amazing story. I'm really glad. Hopefully that boy is okay mentally and physically, and everyone else who witnessed that. I mean, that was a crazy account.
Yeah, and to kind of to your point, like I know like there's a couple of famous exorcism stories that people have heard of. Of course, The Exorcist, the movie, based off things, and some other movies. Like it seems, especially in the modern day and age, that the Catholic Church really kind of downplays the exorcism parts of things, or at least doesn't do them as often as maybe they used to. It seems like because they kind of like attribute things more to like some kind of medical type of thing, right? And interesting story. What Abby was saying, like she's not Catholic, but
Right.
the camp she was at, they just happened to have the bishop of the where she was at was Catholic, obviously.
Mhm.
And for him just to come out and start doing the exorcism, to me, it seems like, and maybe because you're Catholic, you can give the background. Like, I always thought, like, for exorcisms, you have to get kind of referred up the chain or something like that. Because, a bishop, it kind of has to go to a bishop, right, to get approval for it. So, like, the bishop is already at that high level that can approve an exorcism. And I think I asked Abby this, is that was this like a planned thing? Like because the parents, they dropped the kid off and just kind of got out of there real quick. It didn't seem like they were maybe not part of that community necessarily. Like they were from somewhere else and they came here and like dropped the kid off and to get this kind of help from the church with an exorcism. She said she didn't think it was planned like that because she was a counselor, so it would have blindsided everybody. But
Yeah.
at the same time, maybe they didn't let everybody know that, oh, this might happen, because that would have freaked them out even more, maybe. So I don't know. It's very, very interesting that one, it happened and we got the story, because you don't get a lot of these stories like for exorcisms. And I think maybe that's attributed to this being kind of more like a mixed faith type of camp. And it
Yeah.
just so happened where, okay, well, it's not such a tightly locked environment like you would in, say, like a Catholic church in the diocese or whatever. So that we're fortunate, that Abby felt comfortable enough to tell that story, share it. Because you don't hear about them that often. It's amazing, especially the more modern ones.
Yeah, that was not too long ago at all. And my vibe on it, it sounds like it was almost good luck in a way. It sounds like this was a troubled youth.
Mhm.
And his parents were like, all right, well, we're going to drop him off at this faith-based camp to see if anything can help. And, this happened for whatever reason. And the, Catholic bishop was there, just part of the whole camp. And I guess, he was the right person there. And
Yeah.
said the right things. I don't know. It kind of made me think about in other facets of Christianity and other religions to, what other ways and methods from different faiths have been successful with exorcisms. But you do hear mostly it's, Catholicism is involved in some way or not. But that would be, I think I would lose my mind if I saw something like that in real life. And but
Yeah, I have to put myself in, Abby's shoes. Like, I mean, she was young, like a teenager, or in college age, when this happened, very young, and the rest of the counselors too. And they're having to deal with someone who's only a few years younger than they are, who's
Mhm.
going through this. And like, you're not trained for that. Like, nobody tells you what to do. I mean, they did the priest says, lay your hands on them and stuff like that and pray. And that's kind of like the extent of what to do. But like, can you think, I just can't imagine mentally how that affects you to witness something like and be a part of something like that. But it was successful. It sounded like it was successful. Like, so at least it was a positive outcome from.
I think they all handled it right. Like everyone, no matter what faith you were part of, they were all like praying for this
Yeah.
boy. And I think that all had some effects. I think in some way.
Yeah, that's
Um,
kind of cool. They had like a multi faiths kind of come together, like as a
yeah,
like a demon exorcist squad or something. Like would be that maybe be a cool movie. Just like different religions come together to form like a you know a
power.
demon fighting corps.
Yeah.
I'm
Um,
sure there's something out there like that, but that'd
and
be
I'm just like kind of going back to what you're talking about, like, yeah, except for that bishop, no one is prepared really. I mean, they're all these counselors. They went into this trip like, all right, we just got to make sure Becky and Tommy aren't sneaking off at 11 p.m. behind the kitchen house
yeah, yeah,
doing something silly. So like, and then all of a sudden you have like an intense exorcist event. Like,
yeah.
um,
Have you
yeah,
ever been to one of those camps or something like that?
yeah, I have. Yeah, I guess mostly they were like, Catholic based. I think I've been to one that was like more of a different type of Christian based. It's and they were all when I was like a teenager, so all you're really thinking about is girls and all that.
Yeah.
Um,
Leave some space for Jesus between y'all.
yeah, it's they're nice, but to look when you look back on it, they're nice, but like at the time, they're they're kind of cheesy in a way. But they're definitely they're good for kids, and but
Well, they're definitely not set up to be like the last line of defense for your eternal soul, right? So
no,
it's a little heavy for camp counselors to do. But you know what? That would be maybe we should write the screenplay for that
it's a,
story, Zane, and
it's
shop
a
it
good
around.
premise there. Like
Yeah.
just kids being forced to go to some and you got like the young teenagers who can be
Yeah,
brutally killed, which is a great premise for every horror movie. Anyway,
sure.
like you have like kids that are like, I don't want to go to this, and it all builds about like just like the teen hormone thing, and but then you deal with some crazy supernatural event that actually happens, and that's not a bad story right there.
Yeah, yeah. Abby, talk to me. We'll get the rights from you, and then
Yeah,
make sure we get it produced well.
yeah.
Oh my God. Well, I mean, wonderful stories from the listeners.
Mhm.
And, I love them all. And, I really love hearing how people tell their own stories.
Mhm.
It's just so interesting how people convey the messages. I think a lot of people are scared maybe to put themselves out there especially when they have some kind of strange event that is
Mhm.
around their lives. But, if it's in a true event and it happens to you, tell it to people. It might help other people deal with something that they're going through as well. So if you're apprehensive on that, go ahead and share it. See what comes of it.
It almost felt like listening to these stories from these guests, and thank you again for um, bringing that out for us. But it almost felt like it was cathartic to them to kind of talk about it. I just got that vibe, and it would be good to kind of talk about all that.
Oh
So,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Well, I think we'll wrap it up on that story. We do have some more in the bank, maybe for another part later down the road. But go ahead and send your stories in. Let us know how we're doing. Hey guys at Telltale Guys, blah, 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 blah. So, hey guys at telltaleguys.com and on our socials Telltale Guys, as you know.
Yeah.
Saying you
you
got
for
anything fun?
Oh, I was
What's
going to
that?
say thank you for being part of our first like Halloween special.
Oh yeah.
We were looking forward to this for a bit. We thought it'd be a great idea to bring anyone who's interested to talk about kind of their interesting stories, and some of them pretty spooky. Some of them were really just fascinating. I mean, they were all were. But thank you for being a part of it. And it's this might be my favorite holiday. So I was stoked
Okay.
about this, and happy Halloween to everyone.
I guess maybe we'll leave it. I guess we're not going to draw this episode, but Zane, what's your favorite Halloween candy?
Ooh, good one. I would say Reese's Cup, definitely for sure. One that I think people might sleep on is a Tootsie Roll. I just like that chocolate fake flavor. I can see people not liking it, but yeah, that reminds me of Halloween. Is like a Tootsie Roll, but yeah, like a Reese's Cup can't go wrong.
Okay.
Or I guess to go along with that, worst candy too. Worst Halloween trash candy, probably the stupid orange peanut marshmallow things for me.
Blasphemy! I love the orange circus peanuts.
Trash candy.
Candy corn trash.
Oh,
Circus peanuts, pretty good. I do like the flavored Tootsie Rolls better than the chocolate ones.
Interesting.
But I think my favorite Halloween candy, I'm kind of bougie. I like going to the H Mart and get the Japanese candies. So they're a little bit more exotic and have a
Is
good
that bougie,
flavor.
or are you just a fine cultural gentleman?
That's it. I am a gentleman. Yes, a world traveling gentleman with an elite candy taste.
Yeah. And so, trash candy for you is candy corn.
Candy corn. Also, any of those like chalky candies, like Neckos or like sweet, the candy hearts type of stuff.
Sure.
That's for obviously Valentine's Day, but the same they reuse that same stuff for crap, and it's disgusting. I don't know who likes that. It's chalk. It's basically eating chalk.
Yeah, you're not wrong on that. I think I don't mind them for Valentine's Day, but yeah, they are chalk trash candy. So
Yes,
agreed.
yes. All right. Well, I guess with that, we'll say Scully says out.
Out. Happy Halloween, everyone.
Ellie's cane, it rattles in the dark. Ghostly whispers leave a chilling mark. Eric's horse, it gallops with no sound. In the night, they spook the town around. Shannon's mirror shows a scary face. Haunted visions trapped in eerie space. Melissa's guardian and Zeke have RG jeans. Protects her from the night's eerie scenes. Oh, the haunted funhouse cruise on the road. Spooky vibes, they call this place home. From dancing shadows to ghostly moans. It's Halloween, let's party till the dawn. Abby fights demons with a fierce stare. In the moonlight, she takes on any dare. Zane and Josh devour the candy stash. Sugary haunts making a midnight dash. Creaky floors and whispers in the air. Cobwebs hanging from the chandelier. Every shadow seems to have a tale. In this haunted fun house we prevail. Oh, the haunted fun house cruise on the road. Spooky vibes, they call this place home. From dancing shadows to ghostly moans. It's Halloween, let's party till the dawn. Creaky floors and whispers in the air. Cobwebs hanging from the chandelier. Every shadow seems to have a tale. In this haunted fun house we prevail.